Hi, everyone. Good afternoon, good evening, good morning, depending on where you are in the world. I would like to introduce David Ben Moshe. He has a very incredible story to share with us. He will be sharing how he found Judaism in federal prison, converted to Orthodox Judaism, and his he will be sharing his challenges with the Aliyah, with his Aliyah experience. My name is Ariel. I'm with Aliyah Homes. Feel free to like our page and share this interview, for individuals who may be making Aliyah in the future. Without further ado, David, would you like
Shalom, thank you, Ariel.
anytime?
Yeah. So I kind of have an interesting story as to how I became a Jew. And really, the story starts in federal prison, a really low point in my life. And it almost seemed to be like it was meant to happen the way that it happened because it was just the coincidences. So what happened was one day I was in the library and the library was locked down. Much like all of the countries are getting locked down now, it's a thing that happens a little bit more often in prison.
Right.
So during a lockdown, you don't have freedom of movement, and wherever you happen to be at the time the lockdown starts, you have to stay there until, for whatever reason, the compound opens back up.
Mhm.
And so I'm in the library. I'm in the library for hours and hours and hours, and I'm just bored. And I see a guy who is reading a book that's in a language that I don't understand. And after a while, I'm walking around and I stop by, talk to him, ask him what it is. And he tells me that it is the Tanakh or the Bible. And then I look at the page and notice it's got lines like a normal book, but then all along the bottom of the page, there are these little boxes of text that just seem out of place.
Mhm.
And so I asked him what those are. He tells me those are the commentators, the Parshanut. They are explaining what the verses mean. And then he goes on to tell me that, and there's a bunch of different ones that are in this book, and they all give different explanations of what every verse means. Sometimes they contradict each other, sometimes they talk about each other, sometimes they're related to each other. The famous one being Rashi and his grandsons. And this kind of really interested me because the way I understood religion is that generally this is the way it goes and you must agree with it. Debates are not encouraged.
Okay. And which religion were you part of prior to Judaism?
So I grew up fundamentalist Christian, but by the time I was in prison, I wasn't really practicing any religion at all. I was kind of thought I was done with all that, but it turns out that was not the case.
Mhm.
And so from that idea of having different perspectives and interpretations, I started studying more and more about kind of what Judaism is, what it means, different beliefs they have, the different types of Judaism, and eventually came to the conclusion that I wanted to be a Jew.
Okay.
And then when I was finishing up my prison sentence, I was sent to a halfway house in Baltimore, Maryland.
Mhm.
And so I was sent there with no money, less than $20, no friends in the area, wasn't currently talking to my family, just had absolutely nothing to try to rebuild my life.
Okay.
And so I get to the halfway house, and the first thing that happens is I get locked down because the policy in general, when they move you from one place to another, they just lock you down for whatever reasons they have. So I eventually get a chance to put in the pass to go out, and I find an Orthodox shul, B'nai Israel congregation in Baltimore, Maryland. And that was my first trip out of the halfway house, kind of my first dose of freedom.
Great.
And then I started attending services there, and I, interestingly enough, kept going. So they've got a saying in prison about religion, which is it's easy to find religion in prison, but you leave it at the door. Because once
Interesting.
you're
What
out
does that
of
mean?
prison, So the idea is that like you're going through this tough emotional and physical experience while you're inside the four walls.
Okay.
And so it's easy to want to grab onto something to cling to find comfort. And for a lot of people, that's religion.
Hmm.
But then as soon as they're back on the streets and they don't have this burden, they don't find the need for religion. So they completely fall off the train and forget about it completely.
They just abandon it, right? Right.
Yeah. But I ended up not abandoning it till this day. I'm still, so I went to this congregation and they were nothing but welcoming. In fact, the first person who opened the doors the first day I came, his name is Fred, still in contact with him, great guy. I've got lots of friends in the congregation who I talk to on a regular basis. Still talk to my rabbi from that shul to this day. It's an amazing place. If you're ever in Baltimore, Maryland, let me know. I'll hook you up with a rabbi and happy to host you.
Absolutely. I do plan on visiting there soon.
So the rabbi who's there now and the rabbi I ended up converting with was not the rabbi that was there when I first got there.
Okay.
So when I got there was a rabbi, Alan Uter.
Okay.
And so I told him I wanted to convert. And the first thing he says to me is, can't help you. And basically, he told me the reason that he couldn't help me was that he was planning on making Aliyah very soon. And a conversion process, he said, never gets done in less than a year.
Hmm.
And since he was going to be moving to Israel in 6 months, he didn't think it was fair to start the process with me and have me effectively restart when the new rabbi came in.
Uh-huh.
So he told me, just keep coming to services. If you keep coming, show that you're dedicated. I'll put in a very good word. And when the new rabbi comes, I'll introduce you. You can get started then, which I did. And when that new rabbi came in, Rabbi Eitan Mintz,
Okay.
I
What's
started.
his background? 8 minutes.
He is YU, Yeshiva University.
University. Okay.
Yeah. And when he came in, I started studying the conversion process with him. The process ended up taking even a bit longer than a year, ended up being about 4 or 5 years total. And a lot of that was just because of the pace I was going through the material. So it's not like you can just show up and then after X amount of time, they go, all right, go, welcome to the tribe. There are certain observance standards and studying standards that you have to hit before you sit before a Beit Din.
Okay.
Beit Din's a religious court for people who don't know.
Right.
And then it took me a while to get through all that because at the same time, I was also getting together my personal life. I got a job at a gym as a personal trainer, became very, very successful at that pretty quickly. Eventually opened up my own personal training studio in Baltimore, Maryland.
Hmm.
And so I had a personal training studio, had a shul I loved, and then Israel. So during the time that I'm working and studying, I do a trip to Israel on Birthright.
Okay.
And I just really like immediately connect to the land and have this feeling that, one day I'm meant to be here. But I figured that what was going to happen because I had this like big goal of in America of I wanted to study physical therapy and help change the medical model so it's less prescription drug based and more movement based when it comes to treating pain, because that way we could kind of help put a dent in the terrible opioid epidemic, which is taking so many American lives and such a big problem to deal with. And I figured I would become a physical therapist, do my career there, and then retire and move to Israel.
Okay.
But Hashem had different plans for me.
All right.
And the way things kind of worked out was I finished my undergraduate degree at Towson University in Maryland, got into physical therapy school, and then because of pretty blatant discrimination on the physical therapy school that I chose, at the very last moment, even though I was in the physical therapy school, I was not allowed to register for classes, which kind of makes it hard to stay in school.
Right.
And
Right.
so, because of how they did it, I had already closed down my business, ended my lease, thought I was moving down to Florida, and at the last moment, wasn't happening. So then I was like, all right, I guess I can move anywhere. Maybe this is Hashem's way of telling me that now's the time to go to Israel. So I said, all right, time to move to Israel. I talked to my rabbi, and he's like, wait, slow down a second. Did birthright, had an awesome experience, great. And before you jump in, you should spend a few months there to get to know the country and a little bit more of a non-structured. Because the problem with the birthright, like 10-day like whirlwind trip, is they kind of show you a bunch of really good things and make the country like seem like it's completely perfect with no problems.
Right. Okay. All right.
So then I scheduled a 2.5-month trip to study at a place called Pardes, and also to kind of teal's like a travel around the country and
Right.
just see what it's like. I come and I pretty immediately meet a very nice girl,
Okay.
and we start dating. Also, I really fall in love with studying, and the place that I'm studying gives me a fellowship, a social justice fellowship, to study for a year with a stipend. So I said, okay,
Where was this? This was in Paradise, you said?
yeah, Pardes.
You still study there now?
I don't still, I'm still have many close connections with them, but
Okay.
I don't currently study there.
Okay.
So decided to spend a year of my life studying Torah full time in Yerushalayim, which is really a blessing, an amazing experience. If you ever have the chance to do it, I highly recommend it. That relationship keeps growing, and during my time studying, we eventually get engaged.
Okay.
And then when the school year is ending, I'm on a student visa. I apply for Aliyah, which is getting citizenship as my right as a Jew to live in Israel.
Okay.
And that's when my problems start in the country with trying to achieve that.
Okay. And what were those problems?
So initially, we just couldn't get them to answer the application, and they kept trying to leave me in the country without a visa. And this resulted in me being detained and interrogated by border control.
Mm-hmm.
A year of my life with my new wife and a baby on the way without having a work permit, being unable to work.
Okay.
And when we did finally, after 9 months, get them to answer, we thought that, well, actually, we have a letter to former MK Michael Oren saying that they took so long because they wanted to investigate my prior criminal record.
Okay.
And after all that, they decided to reject me because they said my conversion was unacceptable.
Okay. But it should have been because you converted legitimately and everything
Yeah,
was
it was
perfect.
a completely legitimate Orthodox conversion. And also, I got married in the state of Israel through the chief rabbinate. So
Through the
the,
pre-provenance. Okay.
yeah.
All
So
right.
like my conversion had already been checked in and verified by the highest authorities of the state of Israel. And then the Ministry of the Interior, for no reason whatsoever, said it's unacceptable and refused to explain why.
Uh-huh. And you married an Israeli girl, correct?
Yes. So she's actually a dual citizen.
Oh.
Her story is, it's kind of interesting. So the place where I studied, Pardes,
Mm-hmm.
both her parents studied there and met through mutual friends.
Okay.
So we actually have the same Tanakh teacher, me and her parents. And then they went back to the States after they got married for a few years, and then made Aliyah officially when my wife was 5 years old. So she
Right.
grew up in Israel and Beersheba.
Got it. So now just coming back to to the issue. So now the government's saying that you can't not legitimately make Aliyah now because of your conversion wasn't legitimate.
Yeah.
So then what happened?
So then we start the appeals process.
Mm-hmm.
In the meantime, we try to get me a visa based on being married to my wife so I can start working.
Mm-hmm.
And we're unable to do that because the state of Israel doesn't accept any marriages done in Israel for purposes of status in the country.
Mm-hmm.
But they did let me know that since I got married in Israel, I was a Jew and therefore should just make Aliyah, which would be much easier, which was a very frustrating experience. I eventually managed to get a visa based on being in an unmarried relationship with an Israeli citizen.
That's odd.
Yeah, even though they registered my wife as married, which caused us more problems down the road.
Mm-hmm.
Fighting the appeal took 2 years, mostly because they refused to answer anything or give any additional details as to what could be the problem.
Mm-hmm.
Eventually, we went back to the States to get a civil marriage so that I could at least move up a level on visa and be recognized by the state as married.
Okay.
And then that caused an interesting problem because when I tried to use that to change my status to married, we couldn't do it because my wife was already married to me.
Maybe they wouldn't institute. I mean, they wouldn't give you that status because your wife was already married, but to
Yeah,
you.
yeah,
But they didn't
I,
they didn't pick up on that subtle
yeah,
point.
yeah, yeah,
It was just a
and
guy, but
yeah, just the small
some guy.
detail. Yeah,
But
yeah, it's almost like the definition of monogamy.
right, all right,
Yeah.
okay. Okay, fine. So what happened next?
Yeah. So then that actually doesn't get cleared up. Instead, we finally get them to answer the letters about my appeal for my Jewish status.
Okay.
And they finally say that, like, yes, your conversion is acceptable. You can make Aliyah under the right of return, but we will not grant you citizenship because now we want to return to dealing with the criminal record.
Okay, so we left the conversion. Now they see the conversion is okay,
Yeah.
but now we're going back to the criminal record. Just
Yeah,
okay,
kind of from one to the other, back to the one.
okay, fine. Right.
And then the last letter we got said that to deal with a criminal record, they want me to apply to start a trial period. At the end of the trial period, they're then willing to reevaluate my application.
And this is like current.
Yeah, that's what the letter says. We
Okay.
still don't know what any of the details. So we don't know what apply means. We don't know how long the trial period is. We don't know what reevaluate is. They haven't answered any of those questions, but we do have an appointment next Sunday to go in and try to at least get the process started and see what happens next. And if things keep going as they've been going, we'll get another great story of what happens next.
Got it. Do you mind if I ask you a few questions from your story?
No, go for it.
Right. So I guess why why did you convert? I think I asked you this a few days ago when we spoke over the phone. But like, why Orthodox? I mean, Orthodox is it's restrictive. It's like there's so many rules, so many things that we can't do. I mean, wouldn't it have just been easier to convert, I don't know, to reform or conservative?
So I would like to start off by saying this.
Okay.
What is easiest is not always what's best, and often hard, difficult things end up being the most truly fulfilling when you do them.
Okay.
Like, yes, being Orthodox does mean certain sacrifices that you don't have to make should you choose to be a Reform or conservative Jew.
Okay.
But with those extra sacrifices and responsibilities, there are advantages that tie with them.
I understand.
One of my great examples I like to give is full Shabbat observance.
Okay.
So, because on Shabbat, all Orthodox Jews know that no other Orthodox Jews can, travel very far. They need an Eruv to carry things outside on Shabbat. They can't use electricity. They're going to go into shul. The way we deal with those things has helped build a different kind of tighter community. For example, not being able to drive on Shabbat means that we tend to cluster around the Beit Knesset or the synagogue. So you
Right.
then have like all the Jews in the area live in one place. Not caring without an Eru means that there is literally a boundary that everyone wants to live inside. So the community, everyone's like in walking distance from each other. Because they know that when you're traveling to a new area, keeping all the rules is so difficult, the community really helps you, where you can find people in any community who will try to find people to host you so that you have meals and you get hosted. That connects you to the community, and it's easy to find meals and connect with them. The focus on studying in Orthodoxy, specifically on the set study patterns that we all agree on, the big ones being the weekly Parsha and Daf Yomi, mean that you kind of know what people will be discussing and talking about and studying because we're like all on the same schedule.
It's just like I guess just to summarize what you're saying, in essence, it just means that there's more like a unification. You know, we're
Yeah.
unified as like that group, like we're all on the same page almost.
Yeah, it's like if I'm in my shul in Baltimore on Shabbat, or here in Israel, or I've been to California and Italy and
Right.
go to shul. The service is pretty much the same. The prayer book is going to be at least in Hebrew, sometimes in Hebrew and another language. You can find someone who speaks a little bit of Hebrew, you know what's going on, and people just want to connect and help you.
Right.
Which I also have to tell people is one of the reasons why I'm a big fan of wearing my kippah even when I go abroad. Last time I went to Europe, everyone's like, "Oh, don't forget, like, don't wear the kippah all the time. Like, wear like a baseball cap," because they're like afraid of
Right.
like anti-Semitism, which for someone like me is crazy way to think, because growing up black in America, like you have discrimination, but like I can't take off my skin to like kind of hide. So like I want people to know, and that opens up the opportunity for great experiences. Like when we're in Italy, I guess it was a year and a half ago, like someone sees me wearing a kippah, invites me to mincha, I get connected to the community. We met the rep, make sure we're all set, and really helped us. And like just like it's like because they see the kippah, they know who you are, they know that you are kind of one of them, and we're all here to help each other.
Right. And um, going through, the one question I have for you is going through this, Aliyah, process, and it hasn't been easy for you. It's been very difficult from what I gather. How come that hasn't like deterred you from Aliyah? How come that hasn't deterred you from Israel itself? I mean, like, if the government's being problematic, like, why not just be like, all right, I'm just gonna go back to America? Like, why and this is the one thing that I actually, I'm very impressive because it seems like you're going through all these challenges, and yet you still want to be in Israel. Can you explain that more?
So first, I like to make this distinction.
Okay.
There is the government of the state of Israel,
Mhm.
and there is the Jewish people.
Okay.
And they have treated me in completely polar opposite ways.
Okay.
While the state of Israel has done so much to deter me and make the process hard, the Jewish people have done nothing but welcome me and try to help me and do everything they can to help me stay here. Because the Jewish people, this is our country. And even when the government is mistreating other Jews, the Jewish people want you to be here, and we don't make our state better by running away from it.
Mm-hmm.
Like, it's easy to sit in America and say Israel does X, Y, Z wrong, and they should change that.
Right.
But if you want to change it and make the Jewish state a better place for the Jews and for the non-Jews who live here, and to be a light unto the world, that change has to happen from within.
Absolutely. It's a very good answer. Meaning, like, Yeah, obviously, every country is going to have their own government issues. That's just something that just unavoidable. But putting that aside, like what you said was absolutely correct. And the fact is, like, we're a country of Jewish people, and like, you know what, like, we care about our people, and not just ours, but like everyone. We're very welcoming. We take care of everyone in need, and that was kind of
It's a huge Jewish value to take care of strangers in need whenever they need it.
absolutely. And
It's one of the things about making Aliyah. I always tell Americans that Israelis are rude.
Yeah, there's no denying that. But my family's Israeli, I know.
Yeah. And I always tell people you should think of it like this.
Okay.
Americans are much nicer than Israelis, but Israelis are much more friendly than Americans. And what that means is that when you meet someone in Israel, they're not going to say nice things to you just because they're a human being, whatever's on their mind, whether you're moving too slow going down the sidewalk, or you are thinking about what you want to order or in line so they walk past you. They're going to do what they want, and they might argue and fight with you about it. But then when they're talking with you, they'll do things like say, oh, and like after you're done arguing, they'll like, oh, invite you over to like come to their house. In America, you might say, oh, like we'll hang out sometime, you should like come by sometime. And it's like something that people say, but if you were like to show up 2 days later, they'd be like shocked, like, what are you doing here? But when Israelis do that, they like honestly mean it. Like if someone in Israel tells you, like, stop by my house, like knock on the door, like you can come by a week later, knock on their door, they'll open it, they'll welcome you, and then they will try to feed you and feed you and feed you.
Right, I'm taking that as an invitation next time I'm in Israel. Wow, we're almost at like what, like hold on, we're almost at like 30 minutes. Maybe we should do a part two. I'll split this up, but I do have like a few more questions. So what are you doing for a living now in Israel?
Yeah. So I'm a personal trainer.
Oh, you're a personal trainer. How is that going for you? Is it easier to find clients there, or do you have local clients and also international clients?
So I've got local and international. I'm very blessed in that I started training when I left Baltimore 3.5 years ago. I started training clients online because I had some clients who wanted to stay with me when I moved, and you just can't meet someone at their house when you live in a different country.
Wow, cool.
And so I do that one of two ways. Sometimes I meet them through Skype, and we do Skype sessions, or Zoom now. A lot of people switch to Zoom all of a sudden during the pandemic.
Yeah, well, look, it's a good question. I don't know why. I guess Zoom allows you to do live streaming. I mean, we're on Zoom right now.
Yeah.
So
And
okay,
then
so you have a job,
also,
you have a
yeah,
pranasa. That's
yeah,
good.
and also do program design and coaching where I coach people through email or through an app where I put their workouts in, where I'm not actually meeting with them, but I'm there to answer their questions, support them, and make it clear what they need to do to hit their fitness goals and make the adjustments they need to make to make the plan work for them.
Very nice. Okay, so I guess anyone who's watching this, if you want to get fit, if you want to lose some weight, feel free to reach out to David Ben Moshe.
Yeah, and you can always find me on my website, magenfitness.com.
All right, we'll put it in the comments. We'll put it in the comments. And how's your Hebrew?
Kacha kacha.
Kacha kacha. All right. Well,
Yeah.
how are you getting by? How are you?
So the advantage, 1 second, let me turn the alarm off quick. Sorry about that.
It's all right.
Yeah, sorry about that. So I'm lucky enough to have a wife who grew up here who handles all the really complicated Hebrew.
Okay.
And even more so because she's a Hebrew teacher.
Oh, okay. So you got these private lessons. Okay.
כן, ואז אם אני צריך ללמוד, יש ספרים גם, כי היא יכולה לדבר, כשאני מבין ומלמד אותי.
Does she do Opan? She does Opan.
Yeah, she teach
Oh, wow.
for yeah.
Oh, very nice. Wow. So that's incredible. So it's like a match made in heaven. That's great.
Yeah. No, she is perfect in pretty much every way.
Awesome. And I guess just to wrap up, anyone watching this video, this interview with you, what advice would you give our viewers who may want to make Aliyah but are on the fence in making Aliyah? What encouragement or advice or lessons that you've learned from your experience that can help them?
I would say you want to think about it like this. What are the values and what culture you want to have in your life to make your life the life you want to live?
Okay.
America is still a great country, and there are certainly advantages to living in America. For example, you order something on the internet, sometimes it doesn't get to Israel for 3 months. In America, you have 2-day Amazon Prime.
Yeah,
Yeah.
can't beat that.
Yeah. But especially if you value Judaism, this is our land that Hashem promised to us.
Right.
And you don't get to keep something because it was promised to you. You keep it because you hold on to it.
Oh, very nice.
And when it comes to
Oh, I
bringing them
lost
up,
it for a second. I got you back. I got you back.
yeah. And when it comes to living a Jewish life and building a Jewish family, a Jewish country makes so many of those things easier.
Very nice.
From the mundane things like I can go out to eat. Well, I can't go out now because there's a lockdown because of Corona, but usually I can just go out and it's not hard for me to find a kosher restaurant to sit down and eat at. Even my non-religious friends, like if we go out to eat somewhere, it's probably a kosher restaurant because in at least Jerusalem, most restaurants are kosher.
Right, right.
You don't have to explain it's normal to be Jewish. Like when the high holidays come around, and it's like, okay, so in addition to being unavailable ever on Saturdays, I'm also going to have these 2 days I'm unavailable, these 2 days I'm unavailable, this day I'm unavailable, having to explain that to people and then being like, wait, what's going on? Like it's just we're all on the same page and schedule. So like people know like, oh, of course you're not working the entire month, but Israelis don't really like working at all.
Right, right. That's why the employers in America are like, okay, they just want their vacations. They want more.
Yeah.
That's-
Yeah.
No, but I get it. Everyone's just on the same page. Like when we have these holidays, like yeah, of course you have to take off. Like no one's gonna argue with that. Like
Yeah.
even if they're the most chiloni individual who doesn't, is not observant at all, they're like, yeah, I get it. Take a
Yeah.
week off. Take whatever you need for the holidays.
Mhm. And then other things like, so because I'm observant, like I go to shul every day and just like, oh, because I don't like, I mean, I like the shul that's like a 5 minute walk away, but it's like in a caravan and not as nice. I can walk 10 minutes to the ancient shul that they dug up on the archaeological dig and restored and is giant and beautiful. And just like, oh, like the shul every 5-10 minute walk instead of like, oh, like I lived in Baltimore, like I love my shul in Baltimore, but like 45-minute walks to shuls on Saturday are long walks, and then finding minyanim during the week is difficult. Like here, like you just be walking down the street and they'll call you in.
Right, right. All right. I mean, I think we went well like 20 minutes over. So I apologize, but look,
Oh, no problem.
it's definitely a great story, and honestly, if everyone who's watching this video can share it, so we can expose, David Ben Moshe's story here, that would be a great help. And again, if you guys are seeing the value in these Aliyah interviews, please feel free to like our page. We will be having more of these interview. interviews, and we do plan on coming out with another series called Tips and Tricks in Making Aliyah. All right. Have a wonderful day, David. Thank you
All
very
right,
much
thank
for
you. Have a good
joining us. It
afternoon.
was nice having you.
All right, thank you for having me.
Take care. Bye bye.
Bye.